It is now 7:31. I'd like to bring to order the Town of Dartmouth Board of Public Works. This meeting is recorded, and for those of you who have any issues joining by Zoom, the meeting is also broadcast on Dartmouth Television, depending on your cable. It's one of the streaming services. Call to order. Mr. Lavelle,
Here.
Mr. Alves,
Here.
the chairman is present, Mr. Almy. Our first order of business is to approve and accept the warrants for bills payable. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve and accept the warrants for the bills payable period ending December 26, 2023 and January 2nd and 9th, 2024.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. LaBelle and a second by Mr. Alves. So I'll have a roll call vote, please. Mr. Alves?
I'm sorry.
Do you vote yes?
Yes.
Mr. LaBelle?
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. Next item on the agenda, the item is approved unanimously. Next item is to approve and accept payrolls for the weeks ending December 23rd, 30, and January 6th and 13th. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve and accept the payrolls for the weeks ending December 23rd and 30 of 2023 and January 6th and 13 of 2024.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. LaBelle and seconded by Mr. Alves.
Sorry to interrupt, but you have an appointment soon.
Mr. LaBelle,
Yes.
your vote. Mr. Alves?
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. Motion carried unanimously. Has the board had an opportunity to review the minutes from our last meeting, December 21st?
I have, yes.
I have no issues.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve and accept the meeting minutes of December 21st, 2023.
Okay, Mr. Alves seconds. Roll call. Mr. LaBelle?
Yes.
Mr. Alves?
Yes.
Chairman votes yes, approved unanimously. Next item is old business update and possible approval of revised water and sewer connection fees. Mr. Barber, do you want to lead this discussion, please?
Sure. So we've reviewed some of our utility fees in past meetings, and a lot of our fees were set back in the late 90s and the early 2000s. So we are looking to update some of those fees. And including the connection fees. And I'm going to share my screen.
While you do that, Mr. Barber, I will note that the Public Works staff provided a spreadsheet and proposed mitigation fees, proposed connection fees at our last meeting. Are those the materials you're going to show us?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we currently have our existing connection fees for sewer are $1,500 per unit. And we compared, we did a large comparison of similar sized communities with water and sewer of their utility connection fees, both water and sewer. And the different municipalities calculate their fees based on different criteria. Some communities calculate the fees based on water service size. So they calculate the sewer fees based on water service size. Some do it by gallons per day for flows, for design flows. And we were looking at a proposed sewer connection fee, between $2,500 and $3,500 per unit, and base that on the water service size, which would be the demand for the sewer as well. So from $1,500, we would increase $2,500 per unit for a 3/4 inch service, $3,000 per unit for a 1 inch service, and then $3,500 per unit for a 1.5 inch service. And then for large commercial and large residential developments, we calculate using an equivalent residential unit, which is based on the design flow average of like a 3-bedroom residential unit of 330 gallons per day based on Title V flows. So we would propose using the $3,000 per unit as for the 1 inch service for the unit connection fee, and then the design flows based on Title V would be divided by the 330 gallons per day to get an equivalent residential unit, which is what we do now with a $1,500 connection fee. Then we also have, moving forward, we have II fees. We have 2 II fees. We have a 2.1 and a 2.3. The 2.1 is a fee that is charged for a range of gallons per day. So if a development comes in and they propose 2,000 gallons per day to 10,000 gallons per day, that charge is $5,000, sorry. So whether you come in with 2,000 gallon per day discharge or a 9,000 gallon per day discharge, you're paying the same rate for II. So what I propose is a gallon per day charge, and $5 per gallon per day. A 2,000 gallon per day discharge would pay 10,000, and then a 10,000 gallon per day discharge would pay 50,000. So they're paying based on their discharge. Currently, we also have a second II. It's called II 2.3, and that is based on the total estimated daily flow based on Title V flows, multiplied times $1.25. And that typically will capture anything under 2,000 gallons per day for development that doesn't meet that range for the II 2.1. And it's an additional II charge for any developments that are over that 2,000 gallon per day range. We would like to eliminate that 2.3 and just charge the 1 II fee based on the gallon per day. And that would be charged for anything, say, over a 440 gallon per day discharge.
Kim, excuse my ignorance, but does this require Public Works to identify inflow?
So,
Or is everyone required to have this?
so we base our calculations on the Title V flows for any development. So basically, if a residential home came in, they currently pay a $1,500 connection fee and then a $500 inflow and infiltration fee, which goes into the maintenance of our wastewater collection system,
Okay,
into II projects.
okay,
So we're looking at, so on the development side, for larger flows, we charge a higher II fee. So so we would charge $1 per gallon per day based on their Title V flows.
so we're assuming I and I.
We're assuming I and I. Well, so we're assuming I and I at some point, and then
Which we know is there.
yeah, and then based on their flows and the demand on the system that their flows will place on the system, we charge them the I and I fee to complete I and I projects throughout town to tighten up the system and reduce the I and I in the system.
Now, another question is, does everybody in the town pay this? Or is this new construction only?
New construction only. So it's a one-time fee for new construction.
So anyone who built a home prior to this being enacted does not pay a fee?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Ron, any more questions?
No, I'm just trying to get it straight in my
Right.
mind.
Right. Rick?
I just have one. Are we looking for approval today, Tim, or a recommendation to go to the select board and town administrator? Have they been notified about this?
They have been notified, and basically, once the board approves a change in fees, we will update the select board.
Okay, Tim, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
First one is, I think you said that the ERU calculation is based on a 1-inch service.
Yeah.
Why would you base that on a 1-inch service instead of a 1.5-inch service?
Um,
But
we
wait,
would just-
excuse me, for multiple residential projects.
Well, we were doing an equivalent residential unit, so typically in a residential unit for an average 3-bedroom home, which we're estimating at 330 gallons per day based on Title V flow, is connected via a 1-inch domestic water service.
All right, I think that needs to be made explicit.
Yeah.
In these fees.
Basically, we don't have a lot of larger services, but we do have some larger homes with 1.5-inch
Right,
services.
right.
But they're not very common.
No, but I can see the logic
Oh.
for a 3-bedroom home being an ERU and basing the multi-unit calculation on that. But I think it needs to be clear if and when these fees are adopted, that's the basis for the calculation. My second question is, you show 2 levels of I&I fees, $5 per gallon per day or $10 per gallon per day. Do you have, is there a reason for showing those except as example, or do you propose to have 2 sets of fees, and what would be the difference?
So this is just a comparison of what the fees would look like if we charge $5 per gallon per day and then $10 per gallon per day. So at $5 per gallon per day, between 2,000 and 10,000 gallons per day, it'd be 10,000 to 50,000, which is, an increase from a $5,000 charge now. And then if we went to a $10 per gallon per day, it'd be $20,000 to $100,000 just for the II fee. So I thought that might be a bit of an excessive jump at this time, so I was looking at the $5 fee.
So you haven't determined whether you're going $5 per gallon per day or 10, Tim?
My recommendation is the 5.
I have one other question. Where does this stand with the developers submitting paperwork? You know, obviously this isn't approved yet, so it's not with subdivisions approvals, or is it with sewer permits submitted on a timely fashion before or after when this gets adopted? How does that work?
So
Will they
It-
have the old fees or the new fees is my question, I guess. I would have to imagine if if the subdivision's been approved currently, and I don't know what's out there. They would have to apply for a sewer application first
yeah,
to potentially get locked in to the old fees, but again, you know, once it's adopted, the new numbers prevail, correct?
correct. So, yeah, so and once it's adopted and then if an application was received prior to the adoption of the fees, then we would honor the existing current fees.
Very good.
So,
Right.
so based on a subdivision, you know, there are multiple fees. There's a tapping fee for them to extend, you know, the mains into the subdivision. So that's one fee. And then for each connection within that subdivision are these connection fees that we're discussing currently. And then the last fee is for water. So we currently charge $2,000 fire service connection fee for any size of fire service connection. Which it could be an 8-inch, it could be a 1-inch. We charge $2,000. So I was looking at some of the comparisons. And some communities charge for size of fire service, which is based on the demand that service would put during an event. So we were looking at increasing the fees to per size. So a 2-inch would pay $2,000, a 4-inch would pay $4,000, a 6-inch fee would be $6,000, and an 8-inch would be $8,000. It's a one-time connection fee for that fire service. Well, compared to our existing $2,000 fee for any size.
Board members, any other questions? All right, I have one other. Tim, at the top of the list, you have something called proposed sewer capacity mitigation fee. We've been working on this fee with an applicant based on sections 3.5H and section 3.11D of the existing rules and regulations for connection of sewer connection to the town system. And the basis of our discussion recently has been the need to mitigate total suspended solids and biological oxygen demand at the sewage treatment plant. To the extent that the town is able to upgrade its sewage plant to better treat those two pollutants, it seems to me that the mitigation fee would no longer be needed, and therefore the mitigation fee should be considered something that is addressed on an as-needed basis pursuant to the rules and regulations, as opposed to a standard fee. Am I off base on this, do you think?
It can be. So we're also proposing a sewer capacity mitigation fee to mitigate some of the capacity issues that we're having.
Right.
For flow, BOD, and TSS, and other issues. So the fee that we're looking at is either a $10 per gallon per day or a $12 per gallon per day, and that's based on some industry estimates at constructing wastewater treatment facilities at between $10 and $12 per gallon per day. So this fee can be imposed for a time for we can set a minimum discharge. So any flows over a specific design flow, like 2,000 gallons per day, we can charge this capacity mitigation fee until capacity is increased.
And because it would be a standard mitigation fee for a specific purpose, the department would come back to the board when that fee is no longer needed. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, and this would help us avoid having to discuss the issue of a moratorium.
That is correct.
And furthermore, it would address issues for projects, large projects that are currently zoned and would therefore fit within existing zoning. Is that correct? And would not need any kind of variance.
Those projects, if they're over a specific volume, we could still charge that fee.
Okay, if I could make this a little more in the vernacular. In other words, we'd be treating all large projects the same, given that the sewage treatment plant currently, due to its age and capacity, currently has problems, particularly with biological oxygen demand. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, board members. We have, one other question. In terms of charging residential fees, over the last couple of years, what sorts of numbers are we looking at in terms of projects coming in?
Let's say. It looks like in 2022, we had about 20 new water services, 40
Okay.
new sewer services, sewer connections, and then we had a number of replaced or repaired, but they wouldn't pay the connection fees.
Yeah.
And we had and then let's see. In 2021, looks like we had about 40 new water service connections and 46 new sewer service connections.
So by those numbers, Tim, there are more people that are connecting, or there is a higher number connecting to the service than are asking for water plus sewer. Does that suggest that some of the folks that have been paying betterments are beginning to connect to the sewer service?
Yes, yeah, it could be. It could be people
Right.
that, it could have been new developments, connecting, both water and sewer services. There are areas where we extended some new water mains, and some people that stayed on wells could have connected to our water, that have had water service for years. And then, same thing with sewer connections. They could have had access to sewer for years and had an issue with a septic system and decided to connect, or maybe they were putting an addition on and they didn't have capacity in their septic system, so they had to connect. So yeah, there's different variables of why people will connect.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, board members, we've been given a fair amount of information here. And I'm not going to really push for a decision today unless there is consensus on the board to adjust fees. We can do it now, or we can do it at our next meeting. What's the pleasure of the board?
Not quite sure how to answer that. Is there, Tim, is there a need to move this forward quickly?
There is, it's just, as developments, come up, we are not collecting, we're collecting fees that were set back in the late 90s and early 2000s. That haven't been updated in years, so we're missing out on.
So we're losing revenue.
Yeah, yes.
Based on our knowledge that there needs to be investment made.
And basically, with our facility being in that, 80% to 100% range and having to mitigate, the flows coming in, the capital projects that we are ensuing that will be, the cost of that is placed on the backs of the sewer and water users. So that goes towards a rate increase. So as we have more capital projects and our retained earnings are being depleted from those projects, we have to increase rates to make sure that we have enough in our retained earnings to continue.
Yep.
So that's basically these fees will help. They're all one-time fees, and they'll help add to the retained earnings for these capital projects.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not adverse to increasing the revenue streams with the knowledge of the direction this town's going to need to take in the not too near future. So, I would be in favor of this, and I would be in favor of moving forward with it sooner than later.
All right, so Rick, do you have any comments?
I do not. Tim needs to make a decision whether he's going with $5 per gallon versus 10. So you're showing us two different ones. So
Yeah, so my recommendation was the $5 per gallon per day.
yeah,
But the 10 was a comparison.
Right.
So we looked at other towns, and there's one town, community that's charging 13 per gallon per day, which would be high over this $10 per gallon per day, but it's pretty excessive. And I don't think we're looking to be that excessive. We're just looking to, complete some projects. And I think the $5 per gallon per day for the II fee is a good middle ground for our increase.
All right, so let me see if I can focus everyone a little bit. I will entertain a motion for proposed temporary sewer capacity mitigation fee of $12 per gallon per day. The proposed sewer connection fee, as shown by in the handout, with the $3,000 per unit 1-inch service being the fee applied when ERU is equivalent residential unit is appropriate, and an INI fee of 5 gallons per day, and proposed fire service connection as shown in the handout. I'll entertain a motion for that. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to increase the fees as stipulated by the chairman.
second, as long as it's approved by the, from here, it goes to the select board, right, Tim? The
So,
town
correct.
administrator?
Yes.
I'll second.
All right, roll call. It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Kite, do you have enough information to understand what the motion is?
I do, yes, thank you.
All right, I'll go through it again. That's a proposed temporary sewer capacity mitigation fee of $12 per gallon per day. proposed sewer connection fee of $2,500 per unit for a 3/4 inch service, $3,000 per unit for a 1 inch service, $3,500 per unit for an 1.5 inch service. The $3,000 unit per unit number being the basis for calculation when equivalent residential unit calculation is used for large residential areas. And that the proposed I&I fee be is that $440 per day?
No, 440 gallons per day.
440 gallons per day, be $5 per gallon per day. So I will call for the motion now. Mr. LaBelle,
Yes,
Mr. Alves,
Yes,
chairman votes yes, carried unanimously. All right, thank you.
Can I make
By
one
the way,
comment?
let me thank Tim and Ms. Waterman for putting the information together for this. There's a lot of work that's underneath all this, all these numbers. So thank you very much.
Can I make one comment, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
The proposed fire service connection fee.
Yes, I think I caught those when I read the original basis. Let me clarify that the motion includes proposed fire service connection fees of $2,000 for a 2-inch service, $4,000 for a 4-inch service, $6,000 for a 6-inch service, and $8,000 for an 8-inch service. Ms. Kite, do you recall that was the basis for the motion?
Yeah, I have it in the first one.
Yes, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next item is old business B, an update for multi-residential project, 481 Fonts Corner Road. This is coming back to us. The project is requesting a variance before the zoning board, zoning appeals board, and we've been working with the applicant. Staff has negotiated an agreement that's been reviewed by town council. And my understanding, Tim, is that the applicant has agreed to the standard connection fees as they were. And we need to come back to this in a moment. And that the last issue has to do with the mitigation fee, and the applicant has proposed a mitigation fee of $75,000. And based on the negotiations that occurred between staff and the applicant, the department is requesting a mitigation fee of $115,000. So there's roughly $40,000 gap between.
Correct.
Or maybe, wait a minute, that's yeah, that's about right. So Tim, do you have anything to add to our discussion?
So let's see. Let's share my screen here. All right, so you can see the existing connection fees for 481 Fonts Corner Road. Anyone?
I see it. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Making
Yes,
sure.
I can see
That's
them.
fine.
Yep.
Just making sure I shared it correctly. So these are the existing connection fees based on our current formulas. So based on 100 gallons per day per bedroom, for Title V flows, 105 bedrooms would be 11,550 gallons per day. Well, divided that by 330 gallons per day, which is your 3-bedroom equivalent average dwelling, gives you 35 equivalent residential units multiply that time by our current $1,500 per unit connection, which would be 52,500. And then those still using the 2.1 and 2.3 II connection fees. So based on the 11,550 design flow gallons per day, it's between the 10,000 and 20,000 gallon range. So that would be a $10,000 charge, and then the additional 2.3, which is the 11,550 gallons times $1.25, gives you 14,375, which gives you a total connection fee of $76,875. This formula for these connections has been used for about 20 years, or maybe longer. And then the water connection fees are there. The 4-inch domestic is $28,000, and the 6-inch fire service is currently $2,000. So that is the existing fees. So if we look at proposed fees, and you can see the proposed fees now on my screen.
Yep.
Okay, so these proposed fees, I did add the proposed connection fees in here just to show how they would affect this property. But the proposed capacity mitigation fee at $10 would be $115,500, and the proposed mitigation fee at $12 would be $138,600. Mr. Steen had submitted a proposal for $75,000 versus $115,000, and based that on his, he's been in the business many years, and he tends to use actual flows based versus design flows. So we've always used the Title V design flows in our calculations, so we remain consistent. The connection fees here, based on the ERU, at that $3,000 per unit would be an increase from 52,000 to 105,000. And then if we go down to the proposed II at $5 per gallon per day, would be 57,750 instead of 24,000.
All right, so since we have been under discussion for the mitigation of this project for at least 6 weeks, as we go through this discussion, I would like the board to keep in mind as a policy matter whether this board would entertain freezing the obligation of this particular project, this one project, to the fees in effect immediately prior to the action earlier on the agenda, which is to say fees in effect before we adopted new fees today. I just want to put that concept out there. I noticed that do board members, do you have any questions on this? If not, I see Mr. Steen is here. Mr. Steen, do you wish to say anything to the board?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, board members. Just to give you a little history on this project, we applied with the ZBA back in April for a zoning variance. We got through that process pretty quickly in terms of laying out the project to the board, in terms of the design of the building, the layout of the site, etc. At that time, I think back in April or early May, Mr. Barber made a comment relative to the capacity of the sewer system. So we've actually been going back and forth for at least 8 months, I would say, at some level. But to Mr. Almey's point, I'd say that the discussions heated up over the last 6 to 8 weeks. so obviously this is the first project that has been contemplated relative to any kind of a mitigation fee. So I thought, you know, in a sense of fairness, since this thing goes back so far, that we could possibly discuss a mitigation fee that related to the actual flow of the building versus design flows. So, you know, we have a history of 30 years of looking at data from this type of apartment complex, which is a garden style apartment complex, looking at actual flows versus design flows. This has come up a number of times with a number of towns, and it's pretty clear that it's absolutely clear, it's crystal clear that the actual flows on projects of this type are 50% or less of the design flows. So as it's been explained to me through various presentations from Mr. Barber and some of the consultants, you know, some of the issues that we're seeing at the plant relate directly to actual gallons and actual flow at the plant. And I understand, you know, where you guys are coming from relative to some of these new fees and basing it on design flow. But I think in the context of this project, which has been hanging around 8 months, and the fact that the mitigation fee is sort of a new concept, obviously just being approved by the board today, that in my case, we should look at, you know, the actual situation. And I think the actual situation would be that the actual gallons going into the plant would be probably between 5,000 and 6,000, certainly would not exceed 6,000 gallons a day. And again, we have tons of historic data to back that up. So I proposed roughly a $13, based on the actual flow, I proposed a $13 per gallon mitigation fee, approximately at the $75,000 number, in addition to paying what the standard fees would be, which Tim laid out in the first diagram. So that's you know, that's what I have to tell you about it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Board members, any questions for Mr. Steen? I'm sorry, Mr. Steen.
Mr.
All right,
Chairman,
I
can
have-
say something?
Hang on, Mike. I have a question for either you or Mr. Barber. In the discussions over the last several weeks, and based on the tours that the department has held through the sewage treatment plant, can you give us an idea, besides flow, what kind of concerns you have?
Mike, would you like to answer that?
Not.
Yeah, Mike Arnold, would you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Mike Arnold. I'm the manager of the Water Pollution Control Facility. Now, I'm not sure what you're getting at, Mr. Chairman, as far as the flow, how it relates to the mitigation fee?
No, specifically the proposed project we're discussing talks about changing the zoning from a commercial zoning, which would arguably be an office park or office building of some sort, to residential, multi-unit residential. And I had come to the understanding, listening to the discussions, that flow was one issue, and that TDS, total dissolved solids, and I'm sorry, total suspended solids and biological oxygen demand were as big a concern.
Right,
Did I
or bigger.
understand that correctly?
Yes, and that's the point I wanted to bring up. We seem to be talking a lot about flow, but it's what's in the flow that is the thing that we're trying to correct with the mitigation fee. The BOD is the biggest issue right now at the plant, and that's what's stressing the plant right now. We're just about where the plant is accepting about as much BOD and TSS as we can. The plant is designed to treat 7,000 pounds of BOD per day on average. We take that in at times more than 7,000, and we take less too, but you know, the plant's 32 years old, so it's not 100% efficient. So that's the key thing that we're looking at now. Flow is an issue because we do hit 80%, and we do have some days where, you know, the other day during a rainstorm, we were at 6 million gallons or more. And that stresses the plant out. It's the BOD it really grinds on the plant because the aeration system, aeration equipment, the blowers and stuff are just not capable of giving us enough oxygen to treat that many pounds of BOD. So a project like this, the amount of BOD that can come out of there, and Tim and I looked at this the other day, which is where we came up with, you know, the amount of dollars that we would assess for the mitigation fee. That's the biggest impact right now is the BOD loading on the plant. So that's our
Right.
biggest concern. Flow would be the second concern.
So I had mentioned earlier a section of the rules and regulations, section 3.5H and section 3.11D. And in that section, a close read shows that biological oxygen demand is explicitly one of the concerns that can be mitigated through that section with a fee. And so that's why we focused on that particular issue. And so in any event, those rules and regulations also allow the Public Works Director to approve a mitigation, in this case through a written MOU between the department and the developer. And we have proposed a $10 a gallon mitigation fee based on the calculations we discussed earlier. As a matter of policy and direction, if the board wishes to make a different recommendation to the Director of Public Works, we could do that. Otherwise, it seems to me, as we sit here with the applicant, that the department has made a case for a $10 a gallon mitigation fee. The developer has made a case for a different number. And unless the board takes action on this, it would be up to Mr. Barber, the department director, to make a decision.
Well, I
Board
can see
members,
that- I can say that when Tim and I sat down looking at these numbers, we looked at it per bedroom, BOD loadings, BOD generated per person. We looked at it several different ways, using, you know, industry standards, and every which way we looked at it, we came up with just about the same number, right, Tim?
Yes.
And we picked the lower of all the numbers when we came up with this mitigation fee. There were higher numbers, but the number we picked was the lower of all the calculations we did.
Board members, do you have any input for Mr. Barber?
I do. I have concerns, and I have to agree with Mr. Steen regarding, you know, the flows versus the existing flows versus your Title V flows of 110 gallons per day per bed. But to be consistent with what we've done in the past, I have to disagree with Mr. Steen and, you know, recommend, again, it all goes back to when we approve this and when the sewer permits come into place. As my previous discussion, or what I mentioned earlier, when do these permits come into place to get the old fees versus the new fees? And to come back and say, okay, we're gonna use existing flows, which is based on historical data, I guess that's all well and fine, but you're gonna set a precedence, and I don't believe we should set that precedence and have big concerns of what we do in the future. So I have to, you know, my recommendation is if the sewer permits are not in place currently, then, you know, we go with what we just approved with the new fees, unfortunately, with what Tim has, you know, mentioned regarding the 110 gallons per day versus the existing flows.
Mr. Chairman, I tend to agree with Rick. You know, we'll be negotiating fees every new project that comes down the line. We have to establish a means and a methods for a fee and live by it. You know, and I agree, you know, I don't disagree with Kenny at all, but you know, the town can't, this board can't, and the Board of Public Works can't constantly be negotiating with developers about fees.
So, gentlemen, my take on this, my view is that, having established fees in the future, they have become standard. And so the question is whether in this case, because the applicant on the one hand is seeking a variance before the zoning appeals board, and that process is still open, and that the applicant has been, and the department have been negotiating for several weeks over an agreement that would provide funding above standard, the old fees, recognizing the mitigation that's needed for the change in zoning for this project, and what that change in zoning would allow in terms of different flow, sewage, effluent, the fees that the developer originally made application under should be in effect, with a $10 a gallon mitigation fee, and that Mr. Barber would be able to enter into an agreement which has been proposed and negotiated through the applicant and the department, and would be allowed to execute that agreement with a mitigation fee of $10 per gallon, based on Mr. Barber's calculation. I personally prefer to allow that agreement to be executed under those terms. I hear the board members indicating that moving forward, the new fees should be viewed as standard and there would be no negotiation in the future. They become standard fees. Is that correct? And if so, this particular project is maybe considered by the board in this hearing based on the history of the discussions between the applicant and the department and the zoning board of appeals.
So I have a question, Robert. You know, to be fair to Mr. Steen, has this ever come up in the past to be consistent? Again, consistently with regulations in town is the key to have organization. So I guess that question is for Mr. Barber. And I'd like to know what your recommendation is, Tim.
Has it ever come up as far as negotiating fees at a time of increasing fees?
Well, timing is everything, unfortunately, and unfortunately, this is a requirement through ZPA, which we all know takes forever.
Yes.
So because of that fact, has any, like, you know, I know back in the day when you have to submit subdivisions, you can lose your zoning if you don't submit a preliminary plan on a certain time frame. So how does that come into effect with Mr. Steen? I mean, to be fair, but again, we need consistency in town, but I'd like to know that information from you. And what is your recommendation?
Well, I can say that we have an agreement an MOA that was submitted by, Mr. Steens and his counsel. It was reviewed by our council. We received it back yesterday. It's in your package, and our council recommended that agreement be placed on the zoning board, agreement, if it's approved by the zoning board, that's in the approval, so it's enforced by zoning. This is the mitigation fee agreement. As far as the, connection fee, updates and the mitigation fee moving forward, now that the board has approved it, it'll be presented to the town administrator to be placed on the select board, for their decision. And I think once they make a decision on those fees, if they approve the fees, then we would, move forward with requiring that all applications after that date of approval would pay those fees. So I'm not sure when that approval date will be. And, you know, since this project was or is on the books, I mean, if they're willing to pay the $10 per gallon per day based on the Title V flows, I would entertain using the existing current connection fees since the project is currently submitted through zoning, if it does get approved.
So if that's the case, then, yeah, we respectfully disagree, but
Yeah.
for consistency, and it's your department.
Yeah.
And who's the sewer commissioners in the town of Dartmouth?
You three, the Board of Public Works, the sewer commissioners, and the water commission.
It's,
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty I'm having is not being made aware of this negotiation. I mean, I still agree with Rick about the consistency of decisions that we make, and a fee is a fee.
Correct.
And I'm not gonna sit down in future projects and negotiate with contractors. But if in good faith, there was already a negotiation, that I'm a little bit at loss as to, what all the stipulations were made. But if what you're saying, Tim, is that in good faith, you sat down, made and reached this agreement, then I don't want to stand in the way of a good faith negotiation between, Mr. Steen and the board and the chair. So, that said, I think where I stand with this.
All right,
you also
if
mentioned
there's,
town council was involved.
they have looked at, they looked at the agreement.
So is he here today to speak on
Yes.
this and his recommendation?
No, assistant town council made recommendations on an agreement with the DPW to pay a certain fee, and the number was not part of that agreement. It was basically the language in the agreement, and that was just for the mitigation fee. And so if the zoning board were to approve this variance, then an agreement between the public works and the developer would be set and enforced by the zoning board in the zoning agreement.
Yeah, and
That's the only agreement that was made through and reviewed through town council.
And as a matter of policy, it's my opinion that the board sets the various fees, and that legal counsel makes sure that it's done properly. So in terms of review, I believe that town council properly focused on the structure and the agreement as to its clarity and whether it accurately represented the action proposed.
But numbers were agreed to.
So the mitigation fee has not been agreed upon, as you heard Mr. Steen, propose a lower fee than we had. I believe, um, you know, the chairman had discussed if, if they were to agree on this $10 per gallon fee in the agreement, then we would look to maintain the current connection fees.
But based on a lower flow rate, that was,
No.
No, based on the Title V flow rate. For the 115,500.
In other words,
then-
the agreement treats the fees as they have been done. And the mitigation fee of $10 a gallon is treated in the same way as the calculation, the standard calculation for equivalent residential units.
okay,
Right. So if the board takes no action, then it's left to the department director to approve or not approve the proposed agreement as is stipulated in the rules and regulations. So does the board wish to take an action or simply move on in the agenda?
I would move on with the agenda. I mean, Tim has sat down in this negotiation. He's, by my opinion, settled this matter.
All right. All right, before we move on, Rick, do you have any comments?
I do not. I think
All
I've
right.
said all I had to say.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Steen. Do you have any closing comments before we move on?
No, not at all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to the new business part of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
before we move to new business, town council has to leave by 8:45, so
All right.
he's asking that we move to executive session.
All right, with that, we will move to the final category on our agenda, executive session. The board is going to retire to or move to executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21, to review executive session minutes and to address two complaints filed under the open meeting law by Mr. Patrick Higgins. Do I have a motion to adjourn to executive session?
I'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session.
Do I have a second?
Second,
right.
The motion needs to state specifically the reasons, so the motion should be. You
To
entertain
review
a
it.
I'm sorry.
To review executive session minutes.
Well, yeah, you need to say, we're gonna go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21 for the following purposes, and list the purposes.
All right,
So, which are to review executive session minutes, correct?
to address open meeting law complaint dated December 27th, 2023, filed by Patrick Higgins under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A1, and to address open meeting law complaint dated January 10th, 2024, filed by Mr. Patrick Higgins, MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A1. Do I have a motion?
Motion to move to executive session.
Second?
second,
Moved by Mr. Lavelle, second by Mr. Alves. All in favor?
Well, we
Mr.
need a roll
Lavelle?
call, you need a roll call
Roll call.
vote.
Yeah, that, Mr. Lavelle,
Yes.
Mr. Alves,
yes, yeah.
Chairman votes yes. So we will move to executive session. We're back in open session. I'd like to reconvene open session of the Dartmouth Public Works Board, January 28th, 2024. The roll call, Mr. Lavelle,
Here,
Mr. Alves,
Yes,
Chairman is present. We just concluded an executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21, to review executive session minutes to address open meeting law complaint dated December 27th, 2023, and a second complaint dated January 10th, 2024, as listed on our agenda. We are back in open session, and we will now address new business A, which is approval, utility layer renewal review, JC Excavation. Tim?
Okay, JC Excavation was granted a permit last year to as a utility layer to work on a couple projects, but at the time of the application, he did not have all three referrals from municipalities. So the board asked that upon renewal, that the application come back before the Board of Public Works. JC Excavating is currently working on two projects that were permitted. One is a stormwater project on a commercial property, and the other is a smaller project on a commercial property regarding some cast iron sewer frame replacements. I'm told that he is conscientious and works well with our engineering staff, and I do recommend the renewal of his license.
Any questions of the board?
I do
Okay,
not. Does Mr. Duart do the inspections for this gentleman? And does he have any issues with him?
I do not personally do the inspections, but I do not have any issues with Mr. Ciano, JC Excavation. He has been in the learning process of complying with our town standards and specs, and is more than willing to do what it needs to do to get the jobs that he's working on to meet our standards.
Very good. Can I make an emotion then? I'll make a motion to renew the utility drain layer JC Excavation for 2024.
I'll
Motion
second
by-
that.
Motion by Mr. Alves, second by Mr. LaBelle. Roll call, Mr. Alves,
Yes,
Mr. LaBelle,
Yes,
Chairman votes yes. Utility layer renewal extension approved unanimously. Item B, discussion and possible approval, workers' comp exclusions. Mr.
Yes.
Barber?
So, we currently require all licensed utility contractors and right-of-way contractors to have workman's comp for all employees with no exclusions. The policy has been in place for many years, and we have not been able to locate the policy nor a date that the policy was approved and implemented by the Board of Public Works. I recall the policy was put in place to ensure that anyone on site was covered. And I think there were some companies that were, sole proprietors, and they didn't have any employees listed, so we would require them to have no exclusions. As of recent, we've had some insurance companies question so there's a box at the bottom left of the liability certificate for workers' comp, and it states either it's a yes or no, or an NA. And we had an insurance company question. There's a company that's a right-of-way contractor in a utility layer, actually, and one of their officers on their board is not covered by workers' comp, but they're covered by their other profession on workers' comp, their other company. They own the other company. I think they own both companies, and they're on the board of the utility company. And they were questioning if or why that officer would have to have workers' comp, and under the no exclusions that would require. And then in the box on the liability certificate, it says if you choose yes for exclusions, that you can write a description of a proprietor, a partner, executive officer, a member that is excluded. So we researched and tried to find why and when this policy was put in place, and we couldn't find any literature on it to date. But I know at one point the liabilities insurance was increased, and I think at that time the workers' comp no exclusions policy was created, but we haven't been able to find anything on it. So there's one, there's been a couple contractors that have brought this to our attention and questioned why there were no exclusions if somebody didn't work on the job site. I don't know if the board has any comments on that.
Board members, any questions or comments?
I believe, in my opinion, everybody should be required to have workman's comp, period.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think the only people who's not needed is the owner of the company, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm. Yeah.
So what's the problem, or what's the question? I'm
So
a little confused.
So to make it clear, so this is Mercury Heavy Equipment. They're a licensed utility layer with us. They have been for many years. The owner of, or the officer, not sure, of Mercury Heavy Equipment is Bob Long, Longville Homes.
Yeah.
And he is covered under Longville Homes.
Two different names.
Right,
Okay.
right. But he's an officer of Mercury Heavy Equipment, and he's asking to not require him to have workers' comp under the utility layer. Or the
Right.
insurance company is actually.
It seems to me, Tim, that if you can't provide us with the basis for this requirement,
Yeah.
that you ought to give us an opportunity to adopt explicitly this requirement, and that it may be useful to have town council look at whatever the action is to make sure that it does what we want it
Correct.
to do. Other than that, I don't know that this board has a basis for doing anything.
Yep.
Right?
So the basis was, I know there were some companies that the owner is also the operator. They're on the site, right? And they may have an employee, they may not have an employee. So we've always required everybody to have workers' comp,
Even the owner?
even the owner.
Okay,
Yeah, that under the no exclusions, it requires the owner.
okay.
And for smaller companies, a lot of times the owner is the operator. For some larger companies, typically, that may not be the case.
Right. So currently you can't find that clause, correct?
Correct.
All right, well, board members, my intuition is to readopt the requirement.
So we can work on that with maybe town council.
And in the meantime, the requirements are as you say they are, based on the history of application of whatever the requirement is, even if we can't find it, right?
Yep.
I think there's an argument to be made for consistency here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think it's more a legal issue They're not. Did I hear you say that he had, workers' comp under a different company?
Yes, that's what the insurance agent explained to me. The insurance agent explained that he has workers' comp under his other company, and him being an officer of this company, he didn't feel that he needed workers' comp under this company as well.
So who's,
Well, to me, that's
What com-
illegal.
what company is doing the work? I'm sorry.
Mercury Heavy Equipment,
And do they have workman's comp?
they do.
But the other company does not.
No, the other company does as well, just the officer
Does not in both.
does not have workers' comp under both companies.
Okay.
He's covered by the building company, but not by the excavating company.
Okay, that would be a problem in my opinion, but
I would defer to legal counsel.
We can do that.
Yeah, and it seems to me that if the purpose is to get him covered for activities that fall under one company, and he claims he's covered under another company, it's up to the insurance company to convince you and or legal counsel that that coverage is good enough for his activities in the company we care about, right?
Right.
All right, but again, I think you ought to bring back to this board adoption of whatever policy it is that you want in effect.
Okay.
All right, so there's no action here, right?
Correct.
All right.
I'm trying to do some more research. We've had multiple staff members trying to research this and haven't come up with anything yet. So,
Yeah, I think at this point, you just
Yeah.
bring us something new to adopt.
Yeah.
Don't waste any more time on it. All right, any other comments, board members?
No.
All right, moving on to item C, discussion and possible approval, Weston and Sampson agreement for services relating to water system upgrades. This is an amendment. Tim?
Yeah, so Weston and Sampson, so this is an amendment to the existing water meter system upgrade, the cellular conversion project. The original amendment was $92,000 for services continuing for 365 days after the signing of the agreement, which took place in November of 2021, so it's well beyond the 365 days. At the meeting that we had with the engineering firm and the contractor this week, we're reviewing this contract, and the town has not delayed this project at all. It's more of a delay by the contractor. The contract was supposed to be completed in December. Which in that case, we wouldn't be seeing this amendment. So because that was brought up during the meeting, the contractor and the consultant are in discussion on how or who would be responsible for the extra fees. So I'd like to continue this and bring it up at the next meeting.
Yeah, my
once
first
they come
question
to it.
would be, were there penalties written into the contract?
For the contractor, yes, $500 per day.
There you go.
And furthermore, if Weston Sampson requires a fee, a change in their fee because of delays due to the contractor, can that penalty be applied to the Weston and Sampson extension so it doesn't cost the town anything?
Yep, that's what we're discussing now. So
All
that-
right,
yeah, so that's in discussion, and we should have an answer to that probably this week or next week.
okay, so you recommend continuing this item to our next meeting?
I do, yes.
All right,
if I could just add something to that, if you could just, it appears that nobody's reading this contract. There's some errors in here. you can review that accordingly, Tim,
Yep,
that'd be great before it gets presented to the board.
okay.
Because it appears either you or Steve, whoever does the reading of these contracts,
Mhm.
isn't.
For the record, we just suspended the meeting temporarily because of a disruptive uh, interruption through an inappropriate Zoom connection. We had no discussion, and there was about a 15-minute break. So we are back in session. In attendance, Mr. LaBelle,
Here.
present. Mr. Alves, present. The chair is present. All right, we had just completed item new business C, and we are now on committee updates. I was part of the Capital Projects Committee meeting yesterday. There was extensive discussion about the budget process for next year. And there was really nothing else of interest to the Public Works Board. Tim, you can expect some kind of a contact from the assistant
That was me.
town administrator regarding the grant that they are in the process of implementing regarding, I'm trying to remember the term,
MVP?
MVP, yeah, municipal vulnerability preparedness. But that's simply a connection that he's going to make with you. Other than that, I have nothing to report on committees. Any other board members?
No.
All right. Hearing no other reports, we'll move on to the director's update, item new business E.
So, as y'all should know, the DBW staff has been working extremely hard and long hours dealing with back-to-back wind and rainstorms this past week and prior, with damaging coastal flooding, along with snow and freezing temperatures. And then also keeping up with solid waste and recycling. So they've been doing a great job. We did have some damage, along Smith Neck Road, with flooding, along with erosion and undermining of the road. Those were repaired after one storm, and then this past storm, we had the same happen. So back out repairing. So we're working with. I did discuss with Concom about some emergency actions to place some boulders along the edge of the road to prevent the undermining and erosion temporarily while we will work on a mitigation plan for that.
Did you guys consider any riprap as well?
They were looking at large boulders, but they may want to fill the large boulders around with some riprap as well. And I think that MVP grant may have some language as to some design for multiple projects that were on the MVP plan originally, and Smith Neck Road was on that plan. So hopefully some design for some mitigation on that and move forward. We've been dealing with opera funds, the deadline's approaching. They have a deadline for, I think, submittals and awards, actually June of 2024. By email, they stated they had a deadline of expenditures by December of 2024, but I was told in the past, but it was December of 2025. So I'll get that clarified. We currently have 2 projects in the queue with the county, both at level 1 being reviewed by the auditor, the ventilator blower project for the biofilter for the wastewater treatment plant, as well as the ultraviolet bulb project to purchase replacement bulbs for our UV, since most of our UV bulbs in the system have over 25,000 hours on them. This project came back yesterday with comments from the auditor requesting more information. This was procured by advertisement for bid, so we have all the documents that we sent to the county yesterday to respond to their comments, and hopefully that's enough to get them moving to the next level of review by the county. Moving on with, staffing, we still have staffing issues. We're still short about 10 drivers, and we're in the process of hiring one applicant into the CDL training program, an outside applicant. So they'll come in as a laborer, and once they complete and obtain their CDL license, we will reimburse them a portion of the cost that's in that program. I believe it's $2,500. We currently have 3 applicants on the outside as well that we're through Indeed that actually have CDLs. So we're reaching out to them to see if we can schedule interviews. We currently have 7 on-call drivers for snowplow, for snow removal operations, which has been working well with the last couple of storms. We're currently planning to interview applicants for the vacant associate engineer position in the next week or 2. And we have also been interviewing applicants for the assistant water and sewer superintendent position. That's it. We're working on the FY 2025 budget, and we're also working on FY 2025 capital, and we'll hopefully get all that information for the board to review.
Which engineer's position are you?
So when Paul Duart moved to the senior engineer position, they left an associate engineer position vacant.
It was discussed at the assistant DPW director's position that would be one or the other, was it not, with the board, or am I mistaken? Do we need an additional engineer? I guess is my question. I thought that was discussed with the board. Am I wrong? I don't know.
Well, we met with the select chairman and the town administrator. And
With who? I'm sorry?
The town administrator and the select board chair.
Okay,
And there is still a funded vacant position. So they did recommend filling that position.
Tim, do you have the workload that would justify filling that position?
We do. We've been busy. This is, between design work and inspection work, it's constantly busy. Our engineers are constantly out in the field.
As we get into the budget, have you received direction from the town administrator as to what your budget targets are in terms of flat budgeting an increase or some kind of budget constraints?
The town administrator has stated that we're to be submitting a level funded budget and as well as a reduced budget but we haven't had any direction on the reduction yet, and I believe they had the last select board meeting, it was to be discussed, and the finance director was going to put together instructions for the reduced budget and forward it to all the department heads.
So it seems to me that if we're either going to level budget or if there's going to be a reduction required, that may precipitate the possibility of layoffs. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So then why would we fill a position that we might have to immediately vacate?
Yeah, that's a
Great.
good question.
It's a great question. And who's running the department? Is it DPW director or select board? Because I heard you say town administrator and the select board want to hire this new engineer versus Mr. Barber. So I have a problem with that. Like, who's running the department? You or them, Tim?
I am.
Okay. And is it your recommendation that you need additional personnel? I'm a little curious about that, that's all. Because it was discussed, I believe, and I could be mistaken, prior to hiring the assistant DPW director, that would be one or the other because of the workload.
Mhm.
Because for the past 20 years plus, you didn't have an engineer's position. And now we're hiring that position, and now you're hiring additional personnel. So I've heard in the past that Mr. Pacheco needs all the work and workers behind the trucks versus engineering. I mean, I could be wrong. Robert, Ron, please, either back me up or respectfully disagree.
Yeah, I think Rick, I think these are fair questions. Tim D, I think this is something that we need to discuss in the context of direction regarding the budget for next year. Board members, what do you guys think?
No, I agree. I agree with Rick. I agree, with you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, right now, hiring new positions seems a little presumptuous. If the town's looking to reduce or stabilize budgets, hiring new staff would be counterproductive to that effort. And I'm still hanging on to, in all due respect to the assistant director, the issue of the PE still comes, into play here. Do we still have a contract with the prior director?
We do.
Okay. But I would put a hold on hiring as advice from the board.
And I did question the town administrator and the select board chair in regards to the possible budget reduction in hiring.
Yeah, I mean, going through that whole effort and only coming into the new fiscal year saying, well, we've got to terminate the people we just hired, makes little sense.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree as well.
And you're welcome to relate the board's concerns here as you have discussions, either in preparing the budget or questions about hiring.
So I got sticking to the point of hiring. How's Mr. Pacheco's applications with hiring for his personnel? Were we still having issues with HR? Or
We're doing most of the work here at DPW with the hiring, and then so we're getting the applications through Indeed. We're following up with Indeed. Anybody that submits an application to HR, they're forwarding them to us, and then we're working on scheduling the interviews. And after the interviews, if we do recommend hiring, then we forward that to HR for them to start the process. So the process seems to be working more efficiently that way.
Are we moving forward in hiring
As I
for
stated,
people
we,
for Mr.
we-
Pacheco?
so we have one applicant, that applied through the CDL training program. So they're currently in the process of being hired, and they'll have to go for their license. So there'll be a laborer in the highway division until they obtain their CDL license, and then we'll be promoted to the driver position in HMEO and reimbursed for a portion of their schooling and licensing.
I would
which
have
is
to
like-
imagine Mr. Pacheco is involved in the interview process. Is that correct?
Correct, Mr. Pacheco and Mr. Martin, his assistant.
Very good.
Also, as I stated, we have 3 applicants on Indeed with CDL licenses for HMEO positions, so we're currently reaching out to them to set up interviews, and hopefully we can get some staff in here.
Very good.
Tim, are any of the existing staff, MEOs, looking to take advantage of that CDO training program?
So, there were, 3 or 4, current, staff, I believe laborers, and who were interested, who signed on for the program. But what happened at the time that we set the reimbursement at around 2,500, the licensing, class and licensing was about that cost. And I think the classes have now doubled in cost. So,
Ooh.
so I think for them to put up that money right now, which is more like 5,000 rather than 2,500, and then only get reimbursed for half, it kind of deterred them.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I just have one other question, Tim, for you. So from your comment of HR, you said that you guys are taking care of HR's responsibilities now? I don't quite understand that, and if so, I'm concerned with, how should I put this? Concerned with potential grievances, because is that outside of somebody's job? Responsibilities, because HR is supposed to be doing X, and if they're not doing X, then town administrator should be on them. And if you're taking on more work, you or your personnel, is it their responsibility to be doing so? And I've seen too many grievances come by as I don't want any more. And that's my concern. So, you gotta be careful on what you're doing over there, and I'm not I don't work there, so I don't know. So, if somebody's doing work in your department that shouldn't be because of somebody not doing their job, then they should be compensated for it accordingly. And I just have to note that, and, yeah, just be careful, because that does not seem right, in my opinion.
No, I agree, and due to the lack of efficiency, you know, we've taken it upon ourselves to move forward and with handling this to try to get personnel in here. I can meet with the town administrator and see if we can put that back on the human resources department.
But what do you do in the meantime with somebody doing somebody else's job?
Right.
Is my concern. I mean, Bob, please intervene.
Right, and
Ron?
it's been brought up to, you know, the HR and the town administrator, you know, for, you know, that, you know, the staff are going above and beyond, you know, and it's typically not.
Sure, they're getting a pat on the back, yes.
They're not. No,
Yeah.
Well,
not getting the pat on the back.
from a more practical standpoint, if it's in the department's interest to take on this additional work, then I think either position descriptions need to be modified, or perhaps there needs to be a stipend for some of the people who are taking on this work.
No, I agree with that. Absolutely.
You know, and I think that ought to be explored with the town administrator.
Yep.
You know, particularly for if there's personnel activities or training that's happening that's not in someone's position description. I think those are perfectly appropriate for stipends. So, could you please, explore that with the, because as I say, if there's some efficiency with the department doing this work, I don't have any trouble, but I take Rick's comment pretty seriously. You know, if we're out of bounds on what people should be doing, and we got to figure out a way to either move the boundaries or move what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree with Rick. You know, if you're working outside your job description, you should be compensated for that. You should be considered for that. I mean, I'm of the understanding that we have staff in there that have equal job descriptions and are at different pay grades. None of that makes any sense to me. And I don't understand with any clear conscience how that can continue.
Hi, sorry, my mic was locked all that time. I was trying to get DCTV to unlock me. But I've stated this before that when HR and Melissa Jerome and Denise came on board, that it all should have gone back that way, but it seems to have come more my way. And I am now doing, outside of the hiring paperwork, I'm doing all of it over here on top of my job. So I did recently send Tim, and I believe Sandy was copied on an email to have my job description reviewed, because I'm doing everything that I'm spending my time on is not on my job description right now. So I do feel it needs to be reviewed.
All right. So Tim, there's a couple of things here. One is to review Jen's job description and decide whether to, if the position description gets expanded, then there ought to be consideration of either the pay that's being given or a stipend if you think it's temporary, and also consider whether some of the other managers in the department can absorb some of that workload and receive either a stipend or a change in salary. And I'm thinking of Steve, who is looking at training additional operators and bringing people in. So, you know, that's just an example. So if you would please get back to us at our next meeting about, you know, how those discussions have gone. I think this is one of those things that needs to be resolved.
I don't, just make a note, I don't disagree that it's probably in the best interest that your department takes it over, without a doubt. You know, because HR obviously in the past has done nothing. So I think we definitely have to move forward on this, but you know, I think we have to do it the right way. And if there's money in the budget, as you just mentioned earlier, then there should not be any issues. But again, you have to go through the proper channels to get the approvals. But again.
Right.
Oh, Rich, I'm sorry.
All right. Anything else, Tim?
Nope. No, that'll be on my agenda with my next meeting with the town administrator.
Yeah, please. Anything else, board members?
No, sir.
All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. LaBelle and seconded by Mr. Alves to adjourn. So we'll take a roll call. Mr. LaBelle?
Yes?
Mr. Alves?
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. We voted to adjourn. Thank you.